So it gets us very, very close. And so if you have a 1.5 fret and you've been wondering, you know, why do we even have that F major there? Well, it can come in handy for a lot of different things, but now we're going to use it to its full potential as we look at the key of F. So I'm tuned D-A-D, and now I'm going to go ahead and bring in the inset before we go full-fledged and looking at the fretboard. All right. And we've got the positioning dots here at 3, 5, 7, 9, and 12. And they're standard just like in guitars, banjos, mandolins. It's good to have them there. A lot of people kind of go with the diatonic on the mountain dulcimer, but we're trying to get ourselves oriented towards the chromatic. And so I can understand the wanting to bridge the gap between the two of them, but it can be a little confusing if you don't go all in, basically, with the chromatic numbering and the placement of the note placement markers. So 3, 5, 7, 9, and 12. And in D-A-D tuning, that's going to give us on the bass string F, G, A, B, and D, the octave, of course. Same thing on the melody string, F, G, A, B, and D here. And then on the middle string, it's going to give us C, D, E, and F sharp. Make sure you allow for the F sharp in there when we're in the key of D, A, or in the tuning of D-A-D tuning. So I call that F gab, and then C def, reminding myself of F sharp. Whatever alliteration you might be able to use, or initialism that you will use to remind yourself of that, or an acronym of some sort, will help you get oriented with that. So F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and that's going to put our F, boom, right there. Let's go ahead and take a look at our chord shapes that we've been using, not only coming from D-A-D standard, but also we've been using them here in chromatic as well. So starting off here with our L shape. Our L shape encompasses 5 fret spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's just like the L shape that we use when we're over here, encompassing 3 fret spaces, only over here when we move it, you can move your finger like this and go right across, and automatically it'll become 5 spaces versus 3 because of the wider spaces versus the narrow spaces. So if we were going from F over here, we would switch it over there. So 5 spaces for our L-shaped chord. And that gives us our first chord, F major. Now that's for the major. It's going to be 4 spaces if we want a minor chord, because the third is on the melody string. So we can just dip down 1 fret, and that's going to give us our minor, so F minor. And that goes for the L shape all up and down the fretboard. Then we can go over into our slant shape, which is typically tic-tac-toe, 3 frets in a row. Here it's going to be tic-tac, skip a fret, toe. Tic-tac, skip a fret, toe for the major. If we want to make it a minor, the third is on the melody string in this case, so I would take it down a half step. If I had flipped this over, I would have taken the bass string down. So L-shaped chord in this shape. I've been looking for a great way to describe how I do this. Basically, just draw a line that connects to your fingers on the fretboard, and if the line points to you, then all of these rules apply, which means L-shaped chord, bass string is where you're going to find your root. So F is on the bass string, there is our shape. So F major and F minor. If I can connect the line between the fingers on the fretboard and that line points to me, if it's coming this way, it points to me, that means that we've got that rule, the L-shaped chord on the bass. Now if I flip it over and I connect those lines, that line, or those points, that line's going to go away from me. It's pointing out that way. That means that the opposite applies. If the root was on the bass string in this case, then in this case, when we flip it over, the root's now on the melody string. And that's all based on coming over to grab with the thumb basically is what's happening there. So if I go with my slant chord, the root's on the middle string, and that doesn't change no matter what we do. But in terms of where the third and fifth are located, the third is on the bass string in this case. So that line is coming towards me. This rule holds fast that the third is going to be on the bass string. So I'll drop the third, and that gives me my minor. But if I invert this chord and flip it over, that line, if I connect my fingers in a line, that line points away from me. That means now I'm going to go down on the melody string and grab my minor. That's for the slant chord. For the extended slant, which on a normal fretboard is tick, tack, skip a fret, toe, we're actually going to go tick, skip a fret, tack, skip a fret, skip 2 frets, toe. And that is what our extended slant looks like when we're playing on the chromatic. And it really is no bigger of a stretch than it is over here, but we have a lot more other frets to contend with. So it's just getting used to looking down there and seeing how our fingers look. Typically, if we connect our line and it's pointing towards us, the melody string is where we're going to find that root. So right now, knowing what we know, F, G, A, B, I'm playing B flat there, so this is a B flat major chord. Happens to be our 4 chord in the key of F major. The third is on the middle string, so if I take that down a half step, I will now get my minor chord, B flat minor, out of that shape. If I flip this chord over and if I invert it and that line connecting my fingers leads away from me, then the inverse in terms of where the root is located applies. The opposite. If it was over here on the melody string, now it's going to be over there on the bass string if I draw that line and it points away from me. Any of the lines pointing away from you are basically second inversion chords, and that means our thumb is typically on the bass string, and those roots are going to be flipped over. These are sometimes first and sometimes second inversion chords coming towards us, and we can flip those chords over like this. Just knowing where things are located, L shape, root, bass, slant, root, middle, always, extended slant, root on the melody. If you flip the extended slant, root goes to the bass. If you flip the L shape, root goes to the melody. Root is always on the middle with the slant chord. So we can use those chord shapes and just translate them over into our new key. So let's look at our F major. All right. So if we were going to do a chromatic harmonization or a scale harmonization of this, we could start with our F major. And then we go to G minor. So let's go to our next root note. Actually, let's just start with our scale and then we'll go into our harmonization. So our scale shape. There's one across the strings and then there's one going linear up the fretboard. Linear, we want to look for whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So from F, we go up, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, and half step. Do that from the bass string now, leading up, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And those notes are F, G, A, B flat. So it's just shy of our F gab, F, G, A, B, B flat, just below our B. So F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, and then one final half step up to our F. Let's do the same thing over on the bass string now. F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, and then F. Now we can go across the strings, and that pattern is going to go the same, but we basically just go up a whole step, and a half step. And then we come over here and start right across from where we started, and then do whole step, and you'll see whole step. It's the exact same combination. Even though it doesn't really make sense upstairs, it doesn't follow the pattern the same way we did this way, because instead of going up one more, we're coming across. That accounts for one of our steps. So it's that step right there that throws us off. So there is our scale from F, nice and low, so that's easy to play around with some of the richer tones and textures that we can get. Now let's look at our scale harmonization. Okay, so there's F major. We've got our long side of the L shape. Next, root note G, we're going to go up, and G minor is what we're looking for based off the second scale degree. So we're going to get a space of 4 frets as opposed to 5 frets, and that's giving us our G minor. Our next root note, very easy to move up and keep our L shape to the minor, encompassing 4 frets. There's our A minor. Now we can do a couple of things here. We can move up a half step and branch out our L shape into 5 frets. Sorry. And there is our B flat major. Or if you want to bounce back down and get into our richer tones, we can do a different chord shape here and graduate over to our slant, because we have a B flat right here at the 1st fret. So all we would have to do is grab this F, and we have our B flat already, and boom, we have our D. And so we've got a nice B flat down here, which is going to move very nicely into our C major, which is also going to be a slant shape. Okay, and then we're going to D minor. So we want to get this spacing in our slant. We want to make sure we go down here with the 3rd and get that F natural there. There's our D minor. And still wanting to keep it close to home and resolving nicely into our F, I'm going to take us down here. And there we're going to play our 7th chord, or our 7th note of the scale, and the chord built off of it, the E diminished. And listen to how nicely this slides into F. Nice resolution with that voicing all the way around. So from here, and that's just one way of harmonizing the F major scale, using L-shaped chords, slant chords, and then whatever chord shape you need to for our diminished chord. But of course there are other versions of all of those and other shapes for all of those. And so it's a matter of just sort of getting used to playing through and combining them to get the smoothest chord progressions and feels that we can. So let me go over here and see how things are going on the Zoom side. And also one more thing, let me grab this and do that way. All right, so how much playing in the key of F have you done? None at all?
Hardly ever. I play ukulele too, so sometimes we play F in that, but not on the dulcimer.
Right, okay. It's we're so close with the 1.5 fret, having that on the standard dulcimer. I'm not even sure what to call it anymore because we keep throwing frets into it. Everyone's got a different format. But the modern standard dulcimer, we're right there, but we're missing one of the most important elements of this key, which is the 4 chord. We don't have a B flat note. We don't have a B flat chord, and it can be problematic, but it's not impossible. So let me kind of take a look at a couple of things that we can do. I'm going to go here. I had this going. Oh, I see what's going on. View. And then there we go. All right. And then I'm going to pull this down. Ah, okay. Now I've got my other phone that just went off, and I'm not sure why it's doing that. Let me see if it's showing anything up at the top. Okay, it wants to be allowed again. So we hit allow, and that brought it back. Been having the biggest problem with that camera. I'm just kind of floating off today. Okay, let's take a look at some basic stuff here, starting with the most popular chord progression in the world. That's going to be the 1-4-5 chord. So we look at our chords built off of the first, fourth, and fifth notes of the scale, and we come up with those chords. In the case of F, we've got our F major. There's our one chord. We do have a B flat major and C major, nice slant chord there, and then we can bring it right back in. Now that sounds pretty good. And the reason I like that is because we can shift down. I'm pivoting on the F itself. F is also in the 4 chord here. So I'm just going to let go of the melody string and the middle string, pivot on my index finger, and use my ring finger to bring in the B flat. And I'm not playing anything on the melody string. That's a really nice way of switching from the 1 to the 4 chord. That just sounds so good to me because it's not something you get to hear on a standard dulcimer. We don't have the B flat, so when you go from that F, you don't get that beautiful feeling when you go to the 4. I also like the fact that this is a slant chord, but we don't have to close the chord. We don't have to put all of our fingers down on it. That leaves us a little bit free to do some other things. If I have to do a completion of a slant chord, I have to use these 3 fingers, and so they're all locked in, and there's not much I can do. Well, I can, but in that position it doesn't work out nearly as well. If I'm here, for example, trying to do something like this, I'm trying to hammer on the middle string from open, and it doesn't sound all that great because there's too much of an interval. However, just a half step, that sounds really, really good on that B flat down there. So maybe hit the F by itself, let the other 2 strings open, and come in late on the middle string with that B flat. That sounds so good. And use that in time with your 1 chord. Got a little lilt to it. Very nice indeed. So it's not really a stretch at all to keep those 2 fingers where they are, where they need to be, and then you can simply move them, slide them up into position for your C, and either drop your pinky or switch these 2 fingers out, move your ring finger down there, and this. I'm so used to playing some of these chords like this that, let me see what I'm going to do here. So if you don't hit it all at once there, you get a little suspended tweak, which is not bad. That's a C suspended 2 chord. It's playing the 2nd note of the scale as opposed to the 3rd note of the scale, which is normal for a triad there. So you could throw that in there, or oh yeah. Now I I did a little sleight of hand there, but I went ahead and I changed the configuration of my fingers because that feels more natural and normal to me. So when I made the switch from here, slow motion, boom. That's kind of the way I'm doing it. But, you know, do it the way that it feels most natural and best for you. Let me go there again. This is the 1-4-5 progression in F major. Pivot. I'm going to swap it up. And then from here, I'm actually going to pivot on my middle finger, which is already at the 3rd fret on C. So I can just pivot on that and literally draw this finger up and let this finger wind down to the F. And then I'm there to keep doing my thing. So much of what we do is about making it easy to play the melodies and the chords that we're playing. And so even though we can go through and harmonize the scale very easily by using the same chord shape, it's going to give us a better movement and a better flow if we revoice those chords and change the chord shapes to access the melody, the harmony, and to make it easier to play. Put everything right where you need it, right? So this feels really good in the hand. And it's a good template for being able to play so many different types of songs because so many of them have these 3 chords. So my recommendation would be to, in all these new keys that we're exploring, is to take the songs that you know that just have the 1-4-5 chords and sing along with them in this new key. Don't worry about the melodies and stuff like that just yet. That might give you a little too much to think about. Right now, we just want to get used to playing the chords, knowing where they live. So if you're singing, you'll actually be thinking a lot less about the chords and more about just trying to keep it all together. By the time you're done with all that, you're going to know the position of these 3 chords super well, kinda. And then you'll probably be ready at that point to start playing the melody and figuring out some other stuff. You know, and kind of moving on and finding your way through that. And we'll do that here in a second.